to start with how, I could probably say we all love the oceans, and everyone would nod their heads and say, yes, we all love the oceans, but how do you put that in practical, personal terms? And maybe we can share that over a beer or as the workshop continues. But for me, I love the ocean because I clearly remember the day. I remember being 11, and I was having a lot of trouble at school. I was hanging around with the right bunch of Herbert mates, and generally hopeless. But I knew what it was like to be a diver. I was only 11, but I was watching Cousteau on television, having the ultimate diving adventure, and he was living under the Red Sea, and he on Conch Shelf 2. There was Hans Huss making those fabulous shark documentaries, wearing the old ex-military rebreather gear. And of course, being a young lad of 11, there was Mike Nelson in Sea Hunt, having the ultimate diving adventures. He was rescuing down jet pilots and all the beautiful women asking Mike Nelson to teach him to dive. And I was only 11, but I knew about diving. I sensed I could feel it, and I was reading magazines and watching it on telly, and I knew enough that when my hero Mike got his twin hose regulator cut in the great underwater battles, it was the exhaust side that was getting cut. So I knew all the detail and sensed I could feel it, what it was like to be a diver. I love the oceans, but a lot's changed in 40 years. For a start, when I dive those sites now, I see a lot more ocean environmental awareness, but I also see a lot less fish in the last 40 years. Our population has doubled. Now, I checked that. I always used to say it's in the last 50 years the population doubled. It works out now it's about the last 40. So there was 3.4 billion of us 40 years ago. There's now approaching 7 billion. So we've put an enormous amount of pressure on the Earth's ecosystem services, not the least of which is the oceans. 60% of us live within 60k of the coastline. So we're having a whopping great effect on the world's oceans. It just stands to reason. I mean, and against this background, excuse me looking at some notes because I've double-checked some of these numbers on the train on the way down. But against this background of pressure on the oceans, we've lost a fifth of the world's topsoil in the last 50 years. And we've lost more than a fifth of the world's agricultural land due to various developments. We've lost just over a third of the world's forests. Well, there's such huge numbers that I spent most of the time on the train down to the lakes, double checking, and cursing a bad connection, but just keep in checking. And of course, we've managed to change our atmosphere. I mean, it's such a large space. How can we have changed it? Well, we have. We've changed it because we've thinned the ozone layer. That might turn into being one of these great technical successes because we think we've now overcome that effect, but we have actually thinned the ozone layer. And in changing the atmosphere, we also managed to increase the CO2 to be the highest it's been for the last 600,000 years. So it's like some out-of-control great experiment going on that we're up to. Not to mention what's going on in the oceans. And again, this is a number I have to double-check. You can look it up yourself. But we've lost, in the last 40 years, 99% of the world's largest fisheries. Well, that's because you include whaling and sealing and everything in, because the numbers are massive. But it's still a huge loss, let alone cod and all the other things that we're more aware of. We've lost 20% of the world's coral, and our human input has managed to warm up the Arctic Ocean a lot. And I've been diving a lot in the Arctic Ocean maybe the last 5 years, working with the top scientists up there, and sure enough, you speak to them and go to the Trans-Arctic shipping conferences and all these things, and within all of our lifetimes, the Arctic is going to become unrecognisable. It's changing so fast. There'll still be some ice about, but with all the Trans-Arctic shipping and all this, what I suppose we have to kind of celebrate is a bit of a clever adaptation to climate change. The fear is that the ocean, we can't change it, it's going to be totally unrecognisable within our lifetime. Scientists have no idea even what it's going to look like. And again in the oceans, and maybe this is the most horrifying statistic, who knows that, but because of overfishing, we have managed to overfish a lot in the last 100 years. In the last 40 or 50, we've overfished a lot, to the point that now the deep continental shelf trawling that we lose 6 million square miles a year of continental shelf habitat to deep ocean trawling. So you can imagine my journey out in the Lake District. I was double checking all these numbers. I thought I'd just mention those as, these are the threats to the world's oceans. But I took the time to check the numbers, and they are the numbers, no matter which way you look at it. Now, when I talk about climate change, or I talk about the oceans, I always have this very optimistic view, and I like to say that in the next 30 years, I believe we are going to find a way to control our outgrowth global population. I feel that we will definitely find a way of stopping the human input into climate change, and we'll learn and understand about our ecosystems and biodiversity enough that we can genuinely protect them. That's because I've got great faith in the next generation, and great faith in this generation that we just kind of have to set the right example for them. We've got no choice. We just have to set the right example to the next generation. Well, to do that, there's one most obvious thing. I feel that we need some global environmental leadership. I'm not quite sure what it looks like. I've been to the UN, and it doesn't look like the UN building. It doesn't feel like it's occurring in there. But I do feel we need global environmental leadership, whatever that might be. And to do that, we need to understand and protect the most complex and largest ecosystem on the planet, which is the oceans. And to do that, we need people like Tom and workshops just like this, you know, so we can really capture it and make a go of it. And I just mucked about in reading on the train, and I was reminded by Margaret Mead, the great Margaret Mead, and you know, she says, you know, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people are able to change the world. Indeed, that's the only way it ever has. So that's the kind of spirit I'd like to go into the rest of this workshop, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all properly. Thanks very much.